so happy we alive.
Networks that we believe enhance the community vibration of our group. The Hempfest organization is extremely diverse, with members ranging from people who are disabled or even homeless to professionals who own businesses or even own more than one home. For the economically disadvantaged among our 100-person core group, we've created a project called Operation Munchies. Hey, don't laugh. At some point, we may have to break to treat an emergency case of the munchies. I once had the munchies so bad that my doctor actually prescribed me a mashed potato and fried chicken patch for my own. Things are changing here, American marijuana. But all seriousness aside, the way Operation Munchies works is that the more financially stable members of our core group purchase gift cards from local supermarkets, usually in $25 or $50 increments, that are available upon request by any core member as long as the funds are there. In the last year, I estimate that over $1,000 has been distributed in this fashion, ensuring that the most humble among us can participate with the knowledge that as long as they belong to our group, are loyal, and are honest, they will not starve. And I say starve because for grassroots activists, that's a reality for some activists. It's really hard to make a living and work full-time in activism. Obviously, we've implemented safety valves that prevent any single member from abusing this nicety. And the result is an understanding by our core members of just how valuable that they are to us. Real, authentic community does not let members go hungry or homeless. A dear 34-year-old member of our core group, speaker and band reception specialist James Matheson, was recently diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer metastasized. He's been given a 15% chance of living more than 5 years. We immediately created a 2-hour prayer circle that has met weekly for 2 months to offer James the only real support that we can think of that we can all participate in. Naturally, not everybody feels comfortable taking part in such metaphysical activities, but you can be sure that everyone understands just how much we value James, how important he is to us as a human being and as a member of our organization. During Hempfest, speakers and bands can expect to be treated to the best hospitality that we can or cannot afford. The same can be said for our 100,000-strong week of volunteer staff. We could have easily got by doing nothing for our participants and staff, as we did in the first several years of Hempfest. But our desire to cultivate community is as important to us and as valuable to us as financial resources are. Now, I'm going to ask you to forget that as I continue on to Hempfest's financial crisis. Being completely rained out in 2004, having had the worst year for contributions in recent memory in 2005, having 2 bounced checks from a vendor and a sponsor last year to the tune of $6,000, incurring legal fees in our struggle to survive a huge development project that's taking place right now in Seattle at the mouth of one of the parks that Hempfest takes up, has all contributed to Hempfest coming up disastrously short last year to the tune of $24,000, the first time that we've ever come up short more than maybe $1,000 or $2,000. Such debt and bad luck would certainly destroy many events. And you may be thinking that our zeal to foster community may have played a role in our finances today. And this might be true to some extent, but I want to point out that it works both ways. Hempfest has community. 2 married members of our core group just recently refinanced their property and paid off every dime of Hempfest's $24,000 debt, despite the fact that James is fighting cancer as their son. We fostered community, and we worked very hard to create, preserve, and honor it sufficiently. Without that keen sense of community, Hempfest as it stands today would be indeed impossible. I want to reiterate that my contention that grassroots activism to me means community activism. You can imagine the pressure that I feel to raise the funds to pay them back and support them as they've all supported Hempfest beyond the call of duty. So this would be a great time to break out your checkbook and write, what's out that, wrong speech, sorry. But the Lord has brought us closer, and Hempfest will make it, We've concentrated for 15 years on creating this organization, and we haven't been the best fundraiser in the world, and we're learning fast, let me tell you. And I just want to reach out to, because there's many great fundraisers in this community right now. I want to say that we're ready to learn, so anything you can do to help us would be great, and I'm not asking for your money. I know better than to ask activists for their money. That's something that we don't do. We don't ask our core group for their money either. I want to impart to you that all of Hempfest's efforts to create community have not stopped with the Hempfest core group. Over the years, Hempfest's sincere approach of aggressive diplomacy as much honesty as is practical within the framework of such an environment, and the general goodwill to all has been partially responsible for forging extremely unusually good and supportive relationships with almost every city department head that we've had the opportunity to interact with over time. We recently met with a police commander who assisted us in evaluating our emergency evacuation plans, which Dominic prepared, and which that officer could not find anything wrong with or offer any improvements on. I also want to point out that the same officer was quoted in international media coverage after last year's Hempfest that made it all the way to Turkey and Taiwan and all over the place, saying good things about us, and I was very thankful for that. In addition, we're scheduled to receive training from the Fire Marshal's office in Seattle to better assist us in responding to emergency situations within our event and in coordinating better with emergency responders in the event of an emergency or serious injury. We have just received permission from the Port of Seattle to utilize their parking lot for vendor and delivery staging, vetting, and processing. And we're in negotiations with Pier 70 management over wrapping attendees behind their complex in an effort to mitigate any undesirable impact that our attendees may have on businesses that exist along the sidewalk there. We feel that such relationships between a pot rally and city and business representatives has been previously unheard of. At times we've felt like we were in a cross between the Twilight Zone and Mission Impossible. And our diligence at creating community is responsible, I believe, for the mutual respect and goodwill that has made such a Herculean effort as a Seattle Hempfest and all volunteer organization possible. And being in Seattle also plays a huge role in Hempfest viability. And we're talking about the grass tops people who you'll be hearing some of today. I also want to point out that Seattle's progressive leadership and their respect for the Constitution of the United States, free speech, and freedom of assembly has also made Hempfest very achievable. And I want to specifically thank Nick Licata, possibly the greatest city council ally that any group could ever have. Thank you, Nick. You know, the Grass Tops folks have been very instrumental in giving Hempfest something that I believe is the opposite of street cred, and I guess it's office cred or something, I don't know what you call that. But it works both ways, you know. And having such distinguished people come and speak on our stage at a marijuana rally has really, you know, shown the media and the public and our attendees, hey, this thing's really big, we're connected from the top, from the bottom, like any good, healthy plant stock is. Someone once asked me, how grass are your roots, Vivian? And I wasn't dyeing my hair, so I assume they're talking about activism. Personally, I am as grassroots as it gets, I think, because despite all my years of involvement in the movement, I am not a professional activist at all. I've never been one. I've never been paid to be doing activism. I'm an amateur. And any potential employers in the audience, please understand I haven't ruled that out. So, you know, I'd love to have, like, you know, more teeth in my head to chew food and stuff like that. But that's the sacrifice of a volunteer activist, and a good example of the downside of volunteerism, and a demonstration of how essential it is for the movement to have well-educated, well-funded participants and institutions who can work the change from the top down as the rest of us work from the ground up. We are all part of this community. We are all essential. The minute we forget that, I believe we have doomed ourselves to failure. If we allow ourselves to be divided, we will be conquered. A plant's health is dependent upon a healthy cell range. Healthy cells, excuse me, that's notes that I wrote in there. From root bottom to the very top of the plant. The pop movement in Seattle is in some ways slightly more warm and fuzzy and less competitive than some of those in other municipalities. This has been a relative unity within our community, and I say relative because not everybody feels as unified as some of us do, but in general there's little infighting and a very small degree of an unhealthy brand of competition. This movement cannot afford to be divided between the medical marijuana advocates, the industrial hemp contingent, and the recreational freedom advocates. We cannot afford to let competition for funding or media positioning become a wedge that divides us and pits us against each other. That's never happened in this movement, has it? This movement cannot afford to sacrifice the countercultural elements which clearly founded the marijuana movement,